Live from our studio centre here in Moscow, where it's just turned 9 p.m, this is RT. Israel has carried out an unannounced missile test in the Mediterranean, sparking an alert in light of a military build-up in the region for a potential strike on Syria. The confirmation came after the launch of 2 rockets was detected by Russian radars. RT's Igor Piskunov brings us the details.
The 2 missiles were launched at around 5 a.m. GMT in the neutral waters of the Mediterranean Sea and then headed towards its eastern coast. This was detected by Russia's early warning system and then reported by the Defense Ministry. At first, no one else could officially confirm this, including Israel and the United States. But then we've heard from the Israeli Defense Ministry, which said that that was a test of a new anti-missile defense system, which they conducted along with the U.S. Washington did confirm that they provided technical assistance. Tel Aviv said that a military plane fired a rocket, which was then intercepted by another missile. Now, this raised lots of question around the timing of this drill, since the whole region around Syria is now filled with tensions, with concerns of a possible military intervention led by the U.S., since most NATO members did say that they're not planning to take part in any military action against President Assad's regime, but France and the U.S. do seem ready to do so. And earlier, President Barack Obama did say that Washington may start a military operation even without the approval of the UN. He does want to see the approval of the Congress, but we've just heard from the U.S. president, who said that he's absolutely confident in the senator's approval, and he stressed once again that this would be a short-term military operation aimed at reducing President Assad's capabilities, and also stressed that he wants to see more help and assistance provided to the rebels. Now, this brings us back to the timing of this drill. So, since many military analysts now are saying that it may have not been only a test of new military hardware, but may have also been a test to see how the Syrian authorities may react to such a situation, or even possibly to see how long it takes for Russia's monitoring systems to detect such rocket launches in that area. So the tensions are clearly still arising in the region around Syria, and so is international military presence.
Meanwhile, President Obama seems to have growing support for a strike. Earlier today, leaders of both parties in Congress said they were convinced the U.S. should respond to the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Now, that's amid a massive U.S. and allied naval deployment in the eastern Mediterranean off Syria's coastline. Russia's also sending warships to the troubled region, but denies it's squaring up to America. Well, let's take a detailed look at the U.S. fleet there. 5 U.S. destroyers loaded with missiles, along with an amphibious assault ship, are already in the Mediterranean, poised for a potential strike. In addition, an aircraft carrier group moved to the Red Sea from the Indian Ocean to support an attack if ordered. The supercarrier, the USS Nimitz, is one of the largest warships in the world. It's more than 300 meters long. It's powered by nuclear reactors, and on board it has 90 planes and helicopters. It's accompanied by a cruiser and 3 destroyers. Well, the U.S. military build-up in the region is taking place ahead of a congressional debate next week on whether to support Barack Obama's decision to strike Syria. Now, that's as the chorus of those against Washington's military involvement is growing at home, and now apparently it's even been joined by some servicemen. Well, that's judging by images uploaded on social media. People in military uniform are seen here brandishing posters saying they did not join up to fight for al-Qaeda in Syria. While the pictures can't be verified, already the Pentagon's reportedly looking into the identities of those involved. Marine veteran Gordon Duff explained to us why many within the U.S. military are not eager to support the Syrian rebels.
50 to 70% of Americans are clearly opposed to operations against Syria, and members of the military particularly lost 5,000 killed fighting the same groups in Iraq that we're advocating that we support in Syria. So members of the military from either side, and there are clear divisions in the military, both the left and the right, none of them have any reason to want to support Syrian rebels. President Obama has gotten himself painted into a corner. There is no way out.
Meanwhile, in the Syrian capital, the prospect of US-led strikes is not what's scaring people the most. RT's Marifanoshina reports now from Damascus.
We were last time in Damascus a year ago. Now we've returned and we decided to meet some of the people we previously interviewed for our report. But sadly, many of them have either fled the chaos or were killed. One of those who died was Mohammed Rafia, a young and very successful, very famous actor who was also an ardent activist. He chose words to defend his country and he was killed for that. We met Mohammed in July 2012 during the filming of one of the most popular Syrian TV dramas, where he played one of the leading roles. Syrian series used to be financially backed by the Gulf states, but after the conflict erupted here, those countries, vocal critics of the Assad regime, withdrew investment from an industry that's made Syria famous across the Arab world.
They want to fight everything good in Syria. They don't want us to be to show our drama to the world, to show our history, the way we live, the way we love each other, the way we take care of each other. That's why they stopped. They are fighting us, actually.
Exactly 10 months after Mohammed's death, we meet his brother Noor.
That evening, a guy who was supposed to be a friend of Mohammed asked him for a lift somewhere. Mohammed would help this boy a lot because he was poor. Then 9 people appeared out of nowhere and grabbed him. The next day we got an anonymous tip that he had been killed and his body had been cut into pieces. We didn't believe that. He's only a civilian, we thought. Why would anybody kill him? Several days later, his body was found. He was killed with 3 bullets, one to his leg, one to the stomach, and one to his neck. During the kidnapping, they wanted to take him alive, to torture him, and to force him to confess that he was working for the government, and then show that to Al Jazeera. Of course, they pay a lot of money for that sort of thing. But he resisted, to the death. When they took him, they also took his car. It's common that such cars are later used in terror attacks. About 3 weeks ago, we got news there'd been a car bombing, and that was Mohammed's car.
Noor, your brother died 10 months ago, exactly 10 months ago. Why you think he was killed?
He talked openly about what he thought.
How did the life here in Syria, in Damascus, change in the last 10 months?
After Mohammed's death, many people who supported the opposition changed their minds. They knew that he was very kind and helped people, all people, regardless of their beliefs. So when he died, they asked themselves, what are those people who belong to the opposition doing if they kill innocent civilians? Some of them are nothing more than criminals.
What do you think about a possible airstrike that America is now planning?
I smile when they tell me about the American attack. We Syrians are only afraid of God. We're not afraid of the US.
Noor showed us another, this time empty grave in the cemetery. The boy's father, who is also a well-known actor living in Damascus, has already reserved it for himself. Marifanoshina RT from Damascus, Syria.
Let's now discuss the situation in and around Syria with RT's contributor Afshin Ratansi, joining me live from London. Afshin, in a moment we'll talk about the refugee crisis now reaching the 2 million mark. But first, let's just talk about where the countries are standing at the moment. France, for example, saying it will not go ahead with a strike unless US Congress sanctions military action. And so does that actually mean that this has got nothing to do with the UN Security Council? It all depends on what the US says.
That's right. President Obama, that first African-American president in history, is presiding over what he presumably realizes is a direct conflict with the United Nations. Of course, he does have Ban Ki-moon, a sanguine figure who doesn't seem to care that much about the fact it looks like it may suffer the same fate as the League of Nations. But President Francois Hollande, yes, cutting a suitably Napoleonic figure, saying, we feel very strongly about it, but we won't do it if President Obama doesn't get his congressional support? I don't know, unclear at the moment whether President Obama needs that congressional support, but he has it anyway if he gives away on Obamacare, maybe.
Well, it seems that he has got that support because today the leaders have said they will support military intervention, and of course that big vote is next week. But so do you think then there will be a definite vote in Congress for Obama to go ahead? The indications there.
I suppose when we first heard the Russian Defense Ministry talking about ballistic items being shot out of ships, perhaps, in the past 24 hours, it should drive home the point to people around the world that Obama can strike at any moment. He is, after all, conducting drone strikes in the past 72 hours in Yemen and in Afghanistan. So I don't think he'll wait for that approval. He's quite convinced he will get that approval, definitely, and there'll be a few deals on things that President Obama didn't particularly want anyway and was only doing to please his base. But no, I don't think he needs congressional approval, the exact vote. He was very clear to say he needed no timeline, and the fact that President Assad is threatening U.S. national security, in which case there's plenty of precedents for the United States president to act alone. The congressional thing is a bit of window dressing.
2 million refugees now, Afshin, a humanitarian crisis unfolding. What sort of repercussions does this have on neighbouring countries?
When one looks at those number of American destroyers, the number of missiles, Tomahawk missiles, the cost of all of that, historians of the future will be saying, why, when there was a peace deal on the table to be discussed in Geneva, did Obama destroy and torpedo the peace deal and leave the plight of the refugees to get worse and worse? One should add, of course, that while there are brilliant people working for NGO refugee agencies, they act as an arm of the American government. It might be incumbent on some of those refugee agency volunteers and more so the people who are paid to work for them to look at where their salaries are coming from the same people that are creating the refugee crisis. But as you say, 2 million. When I was last in Syria, I was writing for Counterpunch, and I was talking about the massive amount of care and concern President Assad's government had for the results of the NATO invasion of Iraq, taking in the equivalent proportionately of 20 million refugees if it was the United States.
Just briefly, you're there in London. Syria seems a long, long way away, but this refugee crisis could have some sort of impact on Europe.
It was very recently that both parties here, the Conservative and Labour, ratcheting up pressure, saying we don't want asylum seekers. The Labour Party here often saying we're swamped with asylum seekers. I think they live on $7 a day. Of course, the refugee crisis will lead to Syrians looking for succor, and I'm sure Britain and America will welcome all these refugees. As you say, hundreds of thousands in that region, and there will be refugees on the streets of London if Obama carries out his plans for war.
RT contributor Afshin Rattansi, thanks so much for your comments, your perspective, live from London. Well, that's what Afshin thinks. We'd like to know what you think about the threat of a military strike on Syria and its consequences. On our website, we're asking what the end game will look like if the US does go ahead with those intervention plans. Well, these are the results so far. And we can see there on screen, more than half of you think a devastating region-wide conflict will break out. A fifth of you believe that Libya should be seen as a blueprint for what could happen next, and 15% think that Washington wouldn't get out of Syria on its own, and just a small number, 2%, not just 8% there, think that any strike would be very short and precise and punitive. RT.com. Be good to hear what you have to say.